Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Games and Writers. My name is Craig Hart, your host, and tonight I have Erik Therme on the show. Erik has thrashed in garage bands, inadvertently harbored runaways, and met Darth Vader. When he's not at his computer, he can be found cheering on his youngest daughter's volleyball team or watching horror movies with his oldest. He currently resides in Iowa City, Iowa, one of only 28 places in the world that UNESCO has certified as a city of literature. Not that it particularly matters anymore, since apparently the U.S. is no longer participating, but no matter that. Hey, Erik, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, sorry, I was checking Facebook. Hey, Craig, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Were you checking the stream? Is it running?
No, I was just checking out my personal page to see if anyone had liked any of my new memes or bought any of my memes, but bought any of my books. But
I
yes,
see how it is. Me.
The show is good too. So, oh yeah, I see you on there now. I've kind of got so my laptop has the computer and the microphone, so I got my laptop at my station, and then I've got the computer behind me.
Good plan. Yeah, the other day I was trying to record one of these, and I kept getting a weird audio loop, and I was like, why is that happening? And I finally realized it was because I had the tab open for Facebook watching the stream, and it was coming back through through the computer and going out. So,
sure.
Yes, I felt rather silly. So, I want to talk a little bit about your journey to becoming a writer. Now, were you one of these people who early on you knew this is what you wanted to do, or were you a relative latecomer to the business?
You know, it's funny. I used to get annoyed when I was younger and, more naive. Now I'm just older, more naive. But people would, like, these actors would become musicians, or this musician would become actors. It's like, just stick. Why are you trying to be? What are you trying to do? Just be your one thing. Right. Well, it kind of occurred to me later in life that when I was young, I drew all the time. Everybody thought I was going to be an artist. I drew comic books, I'd make bubblegum cards, I'd take sheets of cardboard and I'd cut them up, make Star Wars cards, wrap them up in little packages. Yeah. And, then as I got a little older from that, I learned to do guitar. And I played in some bands, and, I really enjoyed that for a while. And then eventually it just kind of segued into writing. And it just kind of occurred to me that those people I was knocking for switching things, I think I've come to understand that if you're a creative person, I always hate to say creative person because it just seems to imply that I'm like a creative person. But, if you have creativity in you, you basically can probably do lots of different things. A lot of people can draw, write, play music. And I just kind of realized that writing was kind of what I really like the best. So even in my younger days, I'd write stories. But it wasn't until I got older that I really began to embrace it. And I think that's because as I got older, my OCD of organization kind of came out in me. I'm very little organized. I like making my lists, spreadsheets, and I kind of came to the conclusion that writing for me is kind of the ultimate form of organization. I mean, you're putting all these words on the page, and you just continuously, you're moving them around, you're, cutting them, making them long, you kind of get a flow for how they sound. I mean, it's just, it's a form of organization. So in that sense, I probably seriously started writing when I was about 15. But like I said, yeah, So I've pretty much been doing it since I've been 15, I guess, to wrap that up with a bumbling answer. So.
No, 15. That's pretty young. I just shifted my leg, and people could see that I was not wearing pants. No.
I was just going to say, I'm not wearing pants. Are we supposed to just close that? Do we need a trigger warning?
No, I'm wearing pants, but they're Snoopy pajama pants.
So, I understand.
It's still understand. Facebook appropriate, right? Everybody loves Snoopy.
Yeah, I suppose. I'll allow it. So. I won't storm out and end the interview or anything.
I was thinking before the stream, I got to remember not to shift around too much. People don't see my jammies.
That's true. Yeah, no, I'm in my lounge pants, right? Yeah, I'm with you. I got my Kmart flannel shirt on, and you can see I got my little lounge pants on. So hey, might as well get comfortable, and hopefully they won't take us off the air. I didn't mean to give you too much of a direct shot of anything there, but anyway, moving on quickly.
I can't believe I had that queued up. That was perfect.
Well, it was perfect. Argue.
I have no idea what the hell we were talking about. Oh, you're right. Yeah. So 15. That's still pretty young though to get, and you've been at it ever since then.
Yeah, I always like to tell people, a 40-year overnight success, because the harsh, I don't want to say the harsh reality is I started writing when I was 15, and I mean, I was pretty serious about. I guess people ask, what's a serious writer? I guess to me, a serious writer is someone who does it consistently every day. Or if not every day, I mean, they have a passion, they have a desire to write and tell stories. So I've been doing that since I've been 15. Now, I only first got published when I was 40. And, there was a lot of years of, submitting to agents, having close calls with publishers. And it was one of those things where, I just realized early on that even if I'm not having commercial success or connecting with publishers, I just want to write. I mean, it's just the joy of writing. So, yeah, so I've never really lost that desire. Like I said, it got hard after, 20 years of chasing agents and everybody just kept passing. But it's all a process, as you know, because you're a writer. You're a very good writer, too. And, it's just a matter. I didn't mean to imply I was a good writer. I just meant you're a good writer. You're a writer like me. You're good. I'm not going to talk about how good I am or bad. But yes, I mean, it's you love to write. I mean, nobody sets out and says, hey, I want to be rich. What should I do? Oh, be rich? Yeah, that's not a thing.
So writing's not the best business plan.
So yeah, so that's just kind of where I like the solidarity of it. I just kind of like when I was in the band, it was problematic. You had to go places and you had to rely on other people, and I just kind of like being lost in my own little corner of the world and telling a story and see what comes out.
So do you like writing or having written better?
That's such an odd question, but yeah, I'm probably more of a having written. I'm right now, I'm kind of in a break between, I just finished up the deadline for a second book, and I'm very much enjoying just having a break now and having written and waiting for it to come back. But it's such a dangerous thing because I don't want to rest on my laurels of, hey, I've written this book, and then a year passes, and hey, I wrote that book a year ago, and then 2 years passes, and hey, I wrote that book. Obviously, to be I want to choose my words carefully. I don't want to offend people. To be a writer, you should technically actively be writing. You should have that desire to write. So I do find myself, I love having written, and when it's done, I love being free, not feeling any obligations, deadlines, and then I quickly find myself getting restless and realizing that I want to start writing again. So.
No, I'm with you. I would probably say I prefer having written. I mean, there certainly are moments when you're in the zone, words are flowing, where it's kind of the best thing ever. But there are certainly times when it's like, oh my God, I would almost. One of the best ways to get me to do things I've been putting off is to say I need to go start writing. And then, I need to clean the room. I need to organize various things that haven't touched in years. But definitely that. And I do also agree with you're talking about people. And again, they want to be, offensive, but I do know people who maybe they have written like one thing 20 years ago, and they still are wearing the writer tag, or even worse than that, people who they write Facebook posts and then they call themselves a writer, but when you talk about what they're working on, there isn't anything.
Sure.
And I've always found that. I don't know. I guess
I find that and again, we're just offending all kinds of people here, so who cares? We're just sometimes I find that the people that are the most talkative about their books and the writing are the people that are writing the least. Because, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because I found that people ask me like what my new book is about, and I learned long ago, don't talk about it. Right. Because if I talk about it, I don't want to write it. If I've already verbally told that story so many times, I lose the desire to write it. So there's kind of an inherent danger in there. Like I said, the people that really just do this because they have to do it and they want to do it. I mean, they're usually the people. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth trying to get them to talk about their books or talk about their stories. I mean, people will ask me, come up and, hey, how's your new book? And I liked it or this. And I'm like, oh, great, thanks. And then I will change the subject and I'll just be like, so what's going on with you? I just don't really I love talking writing, but when people start talking about my books and my writing, then it's, this is different because you're a professional and we're, doing this online thing here. But, small talk, people just asking about stuff. Yeah. I mean, there's something like, I don't know, it's like you're emptying the well, kind of like before you were ready, before you sat down at, your computer or your pad of paper, or however, typewriter, for God's sake, if somebody still does that these days.
Actually, one of the previous guests actually does occasionally write on a typewriter, which I found interesting.
That's very neat, actually.
Yeah.
Old school.
I'm sorry.
Just old school, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
old school,
yeah.
definitely. I mean, I have a couple typewriters, and I have them. There's just something kind of romantic
Sure.
about them,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I've tried to write on them, and it's super fun for about 10 minutes, and then
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't.
it's
I edit way too much. I don't know how
right.
people really got to have it for people that can use typewriters. I mean, you really have to have the story exactly where you want it because, yeah, I couldn't do it. I'm constantly.
There's
I
not
don't
a
think
not a
over the
lot of
course.
copy and pasting going on with a
Yeah,
typewriter.
no. I mean, I literally, I would say, I mean, by the time your first draft is done, your last draft, I've probably touched and modified every. I mean, I would almost say every single word. Even the thes and the ofs and the and uns. I mean, it would not surprise me if literally every single word gets moved or rearranged or rewritten in some way.
Yeah. So, what was the first book you had published?
So my first novel was a title called Mortem, and I actually had written it probably about 20 years ago, and it went through various stages of rewrites, almost unrecognizable. At one point, so in a nutshell, it's a story about a guy whose estranged cousin dies in the small town of Mortem, and he leaves him everything, and the protagonist doesn't know why. He goes to the town, goes in the house, and he finds a dead rat in the kitchen with the locker key in its mouth and a note that says, "Follow me." And from there, he basically has to follow a series of clues to figure out, what's going on. Why did his estranged cousin who died, under mysterious circumstances, leave this to him? And it was one of those where at one point, it was a supernatural element. I really realized that a lot of these books that I've redone is, and maybe this is just obvious, there's a certain thing about it that I like. And I realized with this story, I liked it takes place in a small town, population of less than 1,000. And as I kept going through different iterations of the story, I realized that the one constant, the variable that I liked was the small town. And I just wanted to write a story in a small town. So then I just started, like I said, supernatural. There was a guy, and then he was a demon, and then he was just like a serial killer, and then it kind of morphed to something completely else. So it was a really fun, long process. Then I eventually, in 2014, I eventually just self-published and kind of got things going for me.
So that the first book then was traditionally published.
Yes, yeah, it was actually the second book I had written. I have a first unpublished novel, as I'm guessing we all do, that will probably never see the light of day. But yeah,
Sitting in a drawer somewhere
exactly,
or on a
yeah.
hard drive.
Yeah, I was gonna say sitting on the drawer. That's a little antiquated, but yeah, talking about sitting on the hard drive. But yeah, so I actually got to the point where I self-published Mortem and things were going well. And then out of the blue, I got a message to Goodreads from a woman and said, "I read your book. I really liked it. I'd like to talk to you about acquiring it." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, lady, sure." So I
Right.
looked her up and do some research, and I see that she's actually an editor with a publishing house. I'm like, "Oh crap, this actually could be something." So I reached back to her and found out she was actually the acquisition editor at Thomas Mercer Publishing, which is Amazon's traditional publishing wing. They have some for this. The Thomas and Mercer is thriller, suspense, mystery. They also have like young adult. They have sci-fi, all those. And yeah, they basically just reached out and we talked to her and she reacquired it and then they republished it. And yeah, like I said, that kind of got the ball rolling for me. So.
Okay. And that was book number one. What's the
Correct.
story with book number two?
So book number two, I wanted to write something. So I've always been, one could argue, I've had this conversation with my wife before. One thing they say a writer should always be is true to the story and true to his words. Now, that said, there's some places I'm uncomfortable going. I mean, whether it's like profanity or race or, certain things that's just out of my comfort zone. So I've always kind of written my books with the most, I want to say the most commercial appeal, meaning I want it to be accessible to everybody. I
Right.
like my grandma, can pick up a book, or one of my daughters. So I don't do a lot of violence, excessive violence. I don't do a lot of profanity, no sex. And I realized that with the first book I had written, it was pretty family friendly, but I wanted to write something my daughters could enjoy. And at the time, they were young. They were in junior high and high school. So I ended up with Resthaven, which is basically just about a group of girls who get trapped inside they decide to have a scavenger hunt inside an abandoned retirement home. They get locked inside, a bunch of things go wrong, and they find a little kid hiding inside, and they have to get him to safety. So I literally wanted to do a young adult novel, which is what that turned out to be. Well, when I went back to Thomas and Mercer, they have as a publisher, they're very specific on their needs and what they want. So that wasn't a good fit for them. So then I learned about this thing called, what's it called? Do you know? Have you heard of it?
Was it Kindle? It's Kindle Scout. Yeah. Full disclosure. We were both part of that, and that's how we met, actually. So just so that's out in the open. Yeah, go ahead.
So Kindle Scout was also another Amazon program. Basically, it was a unique thing where you submitted your manuscript and people would read the first couple chapters, I think we posted, and they would vote on whether or not they thought it deserved a publishing contract. And the more votes it got, theoretically, would give it a better chance. But at the end of the 30 days, then the editors would just take a look, and if they liked it, they would offer you a contract. And yeah, when I submitted there, I started reaching out to other authors who were also Kindle Scout, who had also submitted. And that's, as you know, that's how I met you, and you just coincidentally happened to live 20 minutes away. So sidebar for later. But yeah, so luckily they liked the book and they took it on, and then I ended up publishing through them. So
but you're not with them anymore, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Kindle Scout is no longer, as you know, around. So I am with, I guess I should, if your question was, am I with them? Yes, my book is still with them. They're not actively seeking new books, but they did give the option a while back to give the rights back to the authors if they wanted to reclaim them, republish them themselves. But, they're still promoting it somewhat. They still give, it still gets a little, it still does okay. So I'm okay with it for now. So
one of the differences between your book with Kindle Scout and mine is that yours actually made some money.
Well, and for the record, Craig's book Becoming Moon is a beautifully written book. It's literary fiction, and as you know, that's a tough sale. And I didn't think they adequately knew how to market that. They were definitely more focused on the action, thriller, suspense type stuff. But and all these opportunities, all these just open doors to other opportunities, even if it's just meeting you or, I connect with so many great people, through the Kindle Scout process. And it's, no regrets ever on any of it. It's all just one big crazy journey, it takes you from one book to the next.
Oh yeah, definitely. While my experience wasn't as good, I still wouldn't change anything because it was like a stepping stone to other things. I mean, there is a pretty good argument to be made that we wouldn't, well, obviously we probably wouldn't be having this conversation were it not for them. And there's a good argument that could be made that the show wouldn't exist without them because there's a clear pattern that led from one thing to the other. How did, and we'll get back to the rest of the books in a minute. How did publishing your first book change the process of writing for you, or did it at all?
My first one really didn't. I got really lucky, as I learned later, is they basically, the book, so one of the best things an author can do, in my opinion, to your book is to write it and let it sit, let it ferment. Because when you come back, whether it's a day, week, or month, or year, it is amazing the things that will jump out to you and what you need to do. So that kind of had the advantage of being written over the course of 20 years. I pretty much got it to be the best story it could be. And when I submitted it, the editor actually, asked me, she goes, "Do you want a developmental edit? I don't think you need one." And at that time, I didn't know what that was. That's basically where they go through and they really rip the guts, and say, change this gender, this character, this motivation doesn't work, get rid of this character. And I was like, well, no, that sounds like more work. If you don't think I need it, that's fine with me. So, they basically did a copy edit and a proofread, real superficial stuff. And that was pretty much, we were off and running. They showed me 4 covers, I could choose the one I wanted. It was very much, it was kind of like the self-publishing experience with the exception of I wasn't paying for it myself and they were going to distribute it and market it. Because as we all know, the challenge isn't getting an agent or getting a publisher. the challenge is getting people to buy it once it's out there.
Right.
So honestly, it was kind of like a dream deal. It was just, like I said, it was already done. I'd done all the work. They just basically put on a new coat of paint and then sent it out to the Amazon marketing machine. So really nothing changed for me. I just went on to the next book. That said, again, no regrets on my journey, but if I would have been smarter, instead of writing a young adult novel, I would have been like, hey, if I want to stay with Thomas and Mercer, maybe I should write an adult thriller suspense novel. So obviously that's something that we could continue to work together on, publishing house. So I guess in that regard, maybe I could have done things differently, but.
Do you ever go back and read any of your own work?
I do sometimes. I think it happens more often than not if I'm working on a new project and I get really dissuaded or disillusioned, and I just think, as you know how it works, one day your writing is brilliant, the next day it's sort of crap. Right. Well, the problem is you come to learn that when you have to keep working on certain sections and you start to focus on certain aspects of the book and you don't embrace it as a whole, you really start to think it's just crap. And you're like, everything I write is crap. So I would say in those instances, there are times then where I will go back and read it just for the sake of reassuring myself, because, as everyone knows, all those writers are crazy and insecure. But it just gives me, it just lets me know that, hey, you did this in the past. This is a lot of work. You can do this again. You're not just writing garbage. So in that regard, yeah, I do sometimes go back and revisit some of my earlier stuff. Yeah.
Moving to book 3, lead us through that journey, because that one was, as I recall, a little bit different. Like, it seems like with each book you have, and up until recently, you have a different journey. So tell us about book 3.
Well, book 3 would be Rome. That was one, again, I'd written a long time ago. It was a very personal story to me. It was based on kind of most protagonists are a thinly, disguised version of the author. Yeah. This one, very much so. A guy named Kevin, who was a writer, and it had, it was based on some of my friends. It was based on some real locations around town. And that was one of those where I don't want to say, I guess I'll say I call it a mystery, thriller, suspense, or aspects of it, but it's basically just probably a mainstream fiction, drama. And it was one of those where I didn't really have a good place. Kindle Scout was gone. I knew Thomas Mercer wouldn't be interested. And it was one of those where I just thought, this is kind of one I want to do myself, because I can't imagine taking this somewhere and having somebody edit it and rip it apart, because it is so personal to me. And I think it's arguably, my best book, the way it's written. It's certainly my wife's favorite. Mm-hmm. So I basically just self-published it. Yeah, I put it out myself, went through the whole process myself. So I just, like you said, each one is just so different. It's so much of what the material is and what the timing is.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so
that's my personal favorite of the ones of yours that I've read.
And you're on the cover. Your name is on the cover. You have a little blurb I put on the cover. Did you know that? Was I supposed to pay you for that?
I've been waiting this entire time for a check, and I almost just canceled this interview because, obviously. Well, actually, I realized you weren't going to pay me, and so this interview is like payback. So we're now even. How about that?
But didn't you beg me to come on the show because all the other good guests canceled? That's my recollection of how.
Anyway, moving right along.
Yeah, so the third one, yeah. So I actually went back to self-publishing, which, like I said, I never had a problem with self-publishing. It's just, and you get to the point where, theoretically you get a fan base, you get people that know about you more. And I actually know a fair amount of authors that have actually gone with bigger publishing houses and been unhappy with how the work was handled or the distribution or just the editings, and actually went back to self-publishing. Because like I said, in this day and age, it's really just about, you can do everything a publisher can do if you have the funds to do it, the patience to do it. And the distribution is really the big thing, is what kind of fan base do you have? I mean, do you have, newsletters? Do you have people following you that are going to know about it? But it's the marketing, which is arguably the best aspect of having a publisher. But, there's certainly people that are just killing it on their own and doing even better than with publishers. So yeah, I mean, each book and each journey for everyone is just so unique. And it's cool. It's cool that we have so many options now, because in the past, you had a main publisher, or you had to go through an agent to get a publisher, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, and I've been fortunate enough I've always gone back and forth on the agent thing, and I've been fortunate enough to just work directly with publishers, so I haven't needed an agent. Sometimes I think it's a good thing, but it can be a bad thing. They do take their cut, but they do open other doors. They do know other places where to get your, like sell foreign markets or, stuff like that. They can definitely do more for you. But like I said, I've just been fortunate enough to keep it simple and been able to work direct with publishers. And that's definitely, I feel like the landscape these days is a lot of places are just more wanting to work with authors directly and circumvent agents, for better or worse. So
Yeah. Well, I think that in part, and I think this is probably a good thing about it, but I think in part that is a result of the changing landscape of publishing. You talk about the self-publishing kind of coming into its own with KDP and all of these things, and breaking down the gatekeepers. And I think there are a lot of publishers. Well, first of all, there are a lot of existing publishers, I think, that are smaller ones, at least mid-size, that are starting to recognize that trend and start to accommodate that trend. But then there are a lot of publishers, newer publishers, who have sprung up in response to that.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think there are people who are starting to listen to the original complaint of writers, which was we have 5 publishers in New York who control the entire book industry, and they're the gatekeepers, and it's tough to break through that unless basically you know somebody or you're just super lucky. And I guess there are, not to say that people couldn't break through on talent alone, but there's a lot of, it was just a difficult system to get into.
Sure, absolutely.
Put it that way. And so now you've got, a bunch of different options, and as far as I'm concerned, more options the better. I mean, in that regard, and I guess you would call me a capitalist, because when you have competition in an industry of this nature, then you have more options, or more opportunities as well. So where are you now with writing and books in the works or recently published?
So last year then, I had this new book, Keep Her Close, and I thought it was pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. I had the luxury of spending 2 years writing it, so it really got it the way I wanted. And technically, I guess it's a crime thriller. One thing you learn about publishers, and they want to know where it fits, how it fits, And I sent it back to Thomas and Mercer. I thought, okay, this is good. I finally got another book. I can get back in with them. And the editor read it and said they liked it, said they weren't really focusing on crime thrillers anymore. They're more doing police procedural, psychological thrillers. And just kind of left it at that. So I was just kind of like, okay, what do I do with this? I really, really kind of believed in this book. And I'm like, okay, there's a couple other publishers I want to hit. Maybe it's time to go to the agent route, And I mean, the nice thing about an agent is instead of just approaching a publisher, you get at the agent, they like it, they'll clean it up, to different agents, as I understand it, different agents do different amount of hands-on. But the nice thing about an agent is they know exactly what publishers are looking for, and they're just not going to waste the time. They're going to be able to send it out and go, here, I'm going to send it here. This is going to be your best bet here and here and here. And they're going to help you, just craft your future along with that. So basically, there's like 3 other places that I had just kind of heard really good things about, and one of them was Bookitcher, which is a UK publisher, and I had some friends. There's actually another Kindle Scout author, Sarah A. Denzel, who actually recently signed with them. And I basically, sometimes I feel, I don't want to say guilty talking about the publishing path, because the unfortunate reality is I am not going to argue how talented I am, but timing, luck, circumstance have so much to do with it. And it's one of those things, if you're on the receiving end of that, great, go, timing, that's awesome, man. Yeah. If you're not, it just pisses you off because it's not fair. I mean, it's, and it's one of those things where the Thomas and with Mortem, it was a total fluke. Well, I basically just submitted the book to, Keep Her Close to Bookitcher, and, they're a pretty big publisher. They're actually owned by Hachette UK. And, they take agent submissions, and I just submitted it through what they call the slush pile. And a couple weeks later, they, wrote me back and said, hey, we like this. We want to talk to you about signing a contract. And again, it was one of those things where, yes, it was nice to have a couple publishing credits. I'm sure that helped. But at the end of the day, they're just looking for the quality of the material. And I just coincidentally totally not on purpose, wrote the exact type of book they were looking for at the right time. So basically, I signed a 2-book deal with them, which was kind of daunting because I've never done that before. And now all of a sudden I said I kind of like taking my time with Keep It Closed 2 years to write. And now all of a sudden I've got deadlines and
Right.
they want the first draft of this next book in 6 months. Oh, and by the way, you need to do a whole bunch of stuff to this first book, the Keep Her Close book. And like I said earlier, where I'd never heard of what they call developmental editing or structural editing, well, I'd heard of it now. And they basically, this is where they take your book and they say, we love this. Okay, now, change this, get rid of this, cut this, move this. And I mean, I think I ended up writing about 6 new chapters. I cut some sections out. I did some pretty massive work. All the while is why I'm trying to do this new book and get this to meet this new deadline. So that's where I'm at now, and I just finished the second book. It's called I Know You, and it will be released in a couple months. But I can honestly say now working with this publisher has changed a lot for me. I've probably written more in the last year than I've written in the last 5 years, and I write pretty consistently. And you really start to learn when you're with the publisher. I mean, they really have a formula. There's a niche, they want specific things about it. And if you stray too far, they start to reel you back in. And it's definitely been a good experience. I mean, they want your books to succeed. You want your books to succeed. I've been lucky, and there's been some good back and forth. You hear horror stories about authors relinquish their, books to the editor, and they completely change it around. It's unrecognizable, and it hasn't been anything like that. But you have to balance. You have to find that middle ground between, they're investing money in you. You're a product. They want to stay true to your creative vision, but if they don't think your ideas for your creative vision are going to sell any books, they're not in this business to lose money.
Right.
They don't. So it's definitely been, it's again, a whole nother type of journey on this one. And I'm kind of right now, we're just waiting for this other one to come out. I'm finishing up the proofreads, and I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'm going to chat with them about, future projects and, see if they have any interest in what I want to write. But yeah, I am kind of, oddly enough, 5 books later, I've quickly learned, don't take anything for granted. Yeah. And I don't just automatically assume they're going to want my next book. I don't assume I'm going to be back with Thomas Mercer, again with another book. I mean, Kindle Scout's gone. I mean, you just kind of take each book on its own. And like I said, in some ways, it's kind of cool. I mean, if I was doing this for a living, it might be very much more stressful. But I'm not doing it for a living. I'm doing it mostly for enjoyment. So we'll just kind of see what happens next. But yeah, it's definitely been, each book, like I said, has been very, very unique in how it's been published. And maybe something crazy will happen with this next one that I haven't written yet. I don't know. Maybe I'll let Craig Hart publish it.
That guy. Well, I was going to say, you've tried pretty much everything. It's like hybrid publishing, self-publishing, traditional publishing. Like, where are you going to go?
Yeah, that's
What's
true.
Next?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it has been very unique seeing all sides of the aspects, of each one. So, and it's been good. I mean, like I said, it's definitely taught me a lot. And the bottom line is, like I said, you write because you love to write, and that's I'm just keep writing. I'm fortunate enough that I'm finding publishers or people that want to read, or take on my work, and even more important, the people want to read it. Because, like I said, there's plenty of books that get picked up by houses, even big ones that they just don't get read for whatever reason. And, it's too bad. I mean, great authors, languish and no sales, and horrible authors excel and lots of sales. And there's just no rhyme or reason. At the end of the day, and I've had this conversation with Craig before, is, you write because you love to write and you're proud of what you write. And whether or not, does anything, I mean, that's just kind of, that's just kind of,
I mean, it's, when you're talking about writers, I think most writers I talk to couldn't imagine not doing it. And it's not, it is something we love to do and all of that, but there's also something that drives us to do it. It's like, I can't not, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I've said before, and it sounds so, I don't know, starving artist and an addict to say it, but even if I knew I wouldn't sell any more books, I'd still do the writing. I probably wouldn't push myself like I do. But I would still do it.
Absolutely.
And getting your book out there, getting it published, I mean, that's That's a bonus.
Yeah, and I do have to say that anybody that puts their book out there, I mean, that's a huge account for somebody to. People don't realize, it's really easy to knock bad books, but for somebody to take the time and effort, I mean, to even just put together a coherent story, and sometimes they're not coherent, but I mean, just to take the time and dedication and passion, and that's why it's so hard. My daughter recently gave me one of her college papers to grade, or just to kind of proofread before she turned it in. She had written it fast, and she said, "I'm kind of nervous, to have you read it." And it wasn't just me, I think, or because I'm a writer. I think it was just because you don't show it to anybody really, but your teacher. And she's like, "I don't know how you do, I don't know how you let so many people read your book." And it's true. And the reviewers don't. I think the biggest misconception is people think, you're on Amazon, you have a book, oh, you're a millionaire writer, you're just like a celebrity, and you're living the big life, and I'm just going to trash a book, or I'm going to leave a negative review. And, most of us are just normal people with, normal jobs. And, I mean, we're just doing something we love and putting it out there and hoping people will like it. So reviewers, take that into consideration before you leave your nasty reviews. That, and if you don't, and if the reviews are a whole nother topic, but, if somebody says, "I hate your book because your characters are unlikable and this plot is ridiculous and the suspension of disbelief," blah, blah, I can live with that. It's the people that like, "This book sucked," or "bad book," or can't string together, or just "this is dumb." I mean, it's not productive. It's not helpful. I do read my reviews. Not all authors do, and I do take stuff away from them, and I do try to use it to learn to be better. So constructive reviews are a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know how many times, how many reviewers I've read who have, say, for example, been responded to by the author, which, by the way, bad idea. Authors never do that.
Never, ever engage. Ever. Let's just take a moment here. Never. Not even nothing. Never.
I don't think I've ever seen that go well. Like, there's never been a reviewer who's been like, "This was my opinion of the book, but now that you've come back at me and called me a moron, I now see your book is actually really good." There's nowhere that can go that's positive. So just don't. But
why I'm thinking about it real quick, I did want to touch on kind of in that same blog about plagiarism and books. But before I do that, I actually wanted to promote. I do have a new book coming out. It's called Night at Key West. It's about well, just go check it out. You don't need I don't want to ruin anything for you, but it's really good.
That cover design, I especially like the big white bar at the bottom of the cover.
Well, I wanted to be a little vain. I wanted to make sure everybody saw my name at the bottom there. So, but you know what? I'm just going to tell you right now, since I'm a mystery writer, plot twist. Really is Craig Hart. Sorry, where's the camera? It really is Craig Hart, not Erik Therme. Night at Key West. And it really is an excellent book, and Craig owes me $20 now. But if you haven't read it, it's got Hemingway and boxing and fish, and it really is a nice blend of, like I said, I really do enjoy his book, Becoming Moon, which is a really good literary fiction, and I really enjoy his. Do I say his? Am I talking to the public or you? I really enjoy Craig Hart's mystery, thrillers, Serenity, and this is a perfect blend of both, just kind of like the mystery, thriller, suspense. He's blushing. I can see him blushing to the camera, and literary fiction. So it really is an excellent read. So check it out.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Now what? I had some.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're done. Wait. Oh, we got like minutes left.
Oh, no. I'm
going off the rails now, buddy.
First of all, thank you. You're too kind, and your check won't be in the mail, but
cash is fine.
Yeah, cash. Untraceable.
Yes.
So I've lost track of the number of reviewers that I've read who, when they are responded, have said, "Oh, I never thought the author read these."
Sure.
And most authors I know, which I'm sure Stephen King probably isn't up there scrolling through his Amazon reviews.
Right.
But most of the authors in my circle aren't. Well, none of them are Stephen King, first of all. But they're more indie authors, and most of them do read their reviews, sure. And they do matter. It's not. Yeah. I mean, this is a piece of yourself you're putting out there, and we take it personally. So there are babies. Not to encourage reviewers to go easy if a book is truly bad. By the way, if you have an honest negative opinion, that's fine. I don't think we're talking about that. I think we're talking about trolls. who
Oh.
who get on there and just cannot, especially when you're attacking the author personally and you don't even know them. That's that really bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes with the territory, and I definitely, yeah, if there are any aspiring authors out there, yeah, just if you start publishing, just have a thick skin, and it does get easier over time. You just get used to it. I remember just in the beginning being a little taken aback because after your slew of friends and family, tell you how great the book is, and after you badger them to leave a review on Amazon how great your book is, then the real, people you don't know reviews start coming in, and then it's a little bit of an eye opener because it's incredible to me, just everybody reads. You've got a book, that your ideas, you put into this book, but everybody who's reading this is reading something different. They're reading a different story because there's things they're gonna like, there's things different people are gonna hate, there's things people are gonna pick up on, and it seems incredible how you can have one person love your book and the next person just totally hate your book. And that's the way it is. And it kind of goes back to just like I said, do the best you can, do your honest work, and that's all you can do. I mean, you can't control what people are going to react. So,
yeah, definitely. Are there any secrets or little tidbits that you hide in your books that only a few people are going to notice or find? Is that something that you like to do?
Yeah, I learned a while ago. It's really fun to put in people's names, like friends' last names, and this really only works if it is kind of a unique name. Because, like, for example, in Mortem, there was a character named Craig, and it's like even if I had known you at the time, it's not really something people are gonna pick up on,
Yeah.
But like for example, we have another author friend named Aaron Bunce. So in Keep Her Close, I talk about Bunce Avenue. So I like doing stuff like that. A lot of last names turn into street names, or I have some friends, Eric Bodine, there's a reference to Bodine Supermarket. And yeah, I like little Easter eggs like that. And sometimes I like to try to add in stuff from other stories. Those usually aren't very well caught. They're so subtle, but yeah, but definitely the last name thing is just kind of a fun little nod to my friends. Plus, it's kind of a clever marketing scheme because, you put out someone's name and then you obviously show that person, tell the person, hey, look, I put your name in this book. And then they, theoretically then run out and buy 20 copies to give to all their friends and family. Look, my last name's in a book. So kind of a little marketing scam too, but it is fun. Yeah, that's definitely something I do enjoy doing. Or like, for example, I'm sure this was not where Craig was going with this at all, but in Keep Her Close, there's a character that's actually reading, oh, it's one of Craig's books, Serenity Stalked. Which was a lot of fun. He did not ask me to do that, and I'm sure that's not where he was going with this. But again, just a little Easter egg for people that know Craig and I, and know we get along pretty well. So yeah, that was a fun little Easter egg for those readers.
Oh, I wanted to go back just real quick because I forgot to say something about reviews. Talking about newer authors who were just getting out there.
Yeah.
Having a bad review on your book can actually be a positive thing.
It's true.
Because I go to book pages, say on Amazon, and it's nothing but 5-star reviews, and they kind of all say the same thing. It's pretty obvious, or at least I'm very suspicious, that these are somehow our friends and family who have sneaked through the Amazon
absolutely
bot and have put these. So when I see a 3, a 2, a 1, okay, that may not even dissuade me from buying the book. In fact, there have been times when I have been more likely to buy the book because it had those reviews on it. Particularly if it was a nasty one. I'm like, okay, well, fine. I mean, I want to see if the book is actually as bad as the review makes it sound, and it very rarely is. But it gives a level of credibility.
Oh, absolutely.
It's obvious that people other than friends and family are buying and reading it, which is more social proof. So, that's something to think about. If you get a bad review, it's not the end of the world, and it may actually help you.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
What was your hardest scene, or what is the hardest type of scene for you to write?
It's funny you should ask that. I really struggle with writing action. I feel like I don't give myself a lot of credit. Let me rephrase this. I feel like I write good dialogue. I feel like, people comment on the dialogue is good, realistic. Dialogue comes very naturally to me. I feel like I struggle with descriptions. I feel like I, struggle with, basically a lot of other stuff outside of just scenes where characters are talking. But yeah, dialogue to me, or action to me, just kind of feels like I'm going through the motions of what's happening. He raised his fist and punched him. He ducked. He leaned back and then picked up something on the ground. There's so much more. Once you write, you understand. You try to get in the character's head. You try to do thoughts, emotions, feelings, and everything. But anytime I try to do action scenes, it just comes out feeling like forced writing. It just doesn't feel natural to me at all. And I find myself, and this is horrible to admit, that when I come across things where I'm weak in my writing, usually if I have to, I'll push through it, and it's a lot of polishing, but I can get to where I want. But sometimes I'll just kind of detour it, and sometimes it kind of directs the story so I can kind of avoid it, like a bump in the road. But yeah, I definitely feel like I struggle. And not, unlike your books, the Serenity books, which you do very well, there's a lot of action. Like there's not a lot of action, in mine, like direct action, like fighting or physical action. So I definitely struggle with that.
Well, yeah, I think you're more off the hook though if you avoid a scene because you don't want to write that type of scene. There are times when I actually choose or rework a sentence because I can't remember how to spell the original word. So you're working with scenes. I'm on a. Yeah. I can't even figure out how to spell the actual word.
No, fair enough. No, I get it. Yeah, I'll definitely do that too. Can't figure out how to say this, and just something different.
Over the years, what do you think has improved the most? So you're comfortable with dialogue. Mm-hmm. What do you think has improved the most over the past few years for you?
Sure. I think one of the easiest traps for a beginning novelist to fall in, it's kind of what I said with the actions, with action sequence, is looking at the bigger picture of a scene and seeing what needs to be in the scene and what can be inferred. So, for example, the things that really are amateurish to me when I see is, he walked up to the house, he grabbed the knob, he opened the door, he stepped inside, he shut the door behind him. You just write, he went inside. Mm-hmm. Things like that. There's so many, how much you need to describe what's happening, is just so drawn out sometimes and so unnecessary. So I feel like, and it's probably a natural progression with most everybody, most authors, they just kind of start to learn, what really is necessary. Because that's kind of a good segue into, there's a couple rules that I kind of follow when I write, which I've kind of, throughout the years kind of picked up on. And Craig, I'm going to put on my glass. I'm not mocking you. I'm going to put on my Craig Hart glasses.
Would be the first time.
There's actually something here I'm just kind of reading from here. But what I was going to say is, one of the important things is, that I've come to learn throughout years of writing is everything must serve the story. And it seems like such a simple thing to say, but so many people still get it wrong. It's so easy to become self-indulgent when you're writing, and I really like this scene, I really like this character, I want to draw it out. But if it doesn't serve the story in some way, cut it. You don't need it. It's one of those things where even if it just advances a plot point, or even if it gives you more insight, or even if it's a red herring, I don't know whatever. But just because you like the scene or like something about it, or it's really good writing, you should cut it. So everything must serve the story. One of the other things that I learned too, which has really served me well, is enter the scene late and leave the scene early. So when I first wrote Mortem, they actually, in the beginning, they go to the house, they go inside, they walk around, he goes to a gas station, comes back, and then his sister finds the rat. And I had actually, at this time, I was submitting to agents, and agents like, what's happening? Nothing's happening here, She's like, it takes forever to get to the good stuff. And, you don't want to say that each story needs to start off with a bang and a grab or a hook. That's not the case. But I kind of reworked it, and in the newer version, they find the rat now on like page 3. Whereas before it was like page 15. And it just made all the difference. But again, that concept of, enter the scene late, you don't need to describe, everything that's happening up to it. Just get to the part that matters. And then on the flip side, of course, exit the scene early. If possible on a chapter, you always want to try to leave on some sort of cliffhanger, or more importantly, I should say, is you want to ask questions. The whole way you keep readers interested is by asking questions that they want answered. So, leave the scene early is a good example of just not drawing it out later than it needed to be. Another example in Mortem, I was really struggling with this scene where this guy, kind of one of the antagonists, is in his truck and he's at the end of the road, and the main character is standing in the middle of the road, and he's kind of like dogging the guy in the truck. The bad guy's kind of dogging the gas pedal, and the main guy's like, you're not gonna hit me, you're not gonna hit me. And then I had, then the truck takes off towards him, and then he shoots by him, like, it misses him by 6 inches. And then, I had the main character like, oh my crap, and he kind of sits down the road and everything. And it just seemed like it didn't work. So then I realized I cut it to where, the protagonist is saying, you're not going to hit me. And then all of a sudden, it says the truck lurched forward. And then I cut the scene. And it works so much better because you ask a question. And then in the next scene, later it explains, that, I almost got run down by this crazy old man. So yeah, again, just, know when to get out, try to leave on a cliffhanger. And other than that, yeah, I mean, the big thing is just, what do your characters want is always a big thing to always keep in mind. Is I just use the illusion, or the illusion, I don't even know what word I'm trying to say, so I'm just going to circumvent, like we just talked about, like when we write stuff. So the example of, the book needs to be about, it's always about the characters. It's never about the story. Story is secondary. People don't realize that. The example I always use is we still have time for all this? Cool. Is we're on a cruise ship and, terrorists have taken over the cruise ship and all the power's off and, what's going to happen? That's not the story. That's the circumstance, for lack of a better word. The story is really about this guy who's he's estranged from his wife, who's also on the thing, but she's with her new husband and their kids are there, and their relationship, and how are they going to save themselves from, what do they learn, how do they grow? I mean, the story, the main heart of any good story is always about the characters. It's not about it's not about what's actually happening, not about the story itself. So yeah, just always keep in mind, you always ask yourself, what do your characters want? Do they, what's their journey? Because theoretically in every book, characters will grow, they're going on a journey, and they'll be different people at the end of the story. So.
Yeah. And then to use your example of moving from one end of one chapter into the next, like you can use that in really every aspect of the book. You can use that to move from one sentence to the next, one paragraph to the next, one page to the next, and you can just work your way way through the entire book doing that. And I think that's what people mean when they talk about a page turner. I mean that's what that means. And then plot versus character, I was going to ask you which one you would choose, and so you've basically answered that. And I just wanted to add that I used to think that plot was king.
Sure.
And that would that's sort of, as a young writer, I think that's kind of beat into you until you get into some college classes. But I think I've come to realize that I don't mean that arrogant, like I've come to realize now that I have an experience, but that good characterization, which includes motive, creates plot.
It's true.
But I'm trying to think of where plot created a character, like a fully developed character, and I can't think of a good example. But there are plenty of examples where that's worked the other way. And so, yeah, basically I'm just saying that to say I totally agree with you. So picture this. You feel uninspired. You've sat at the computer for an hour without conquering any words. How do you get your creativity flowing?
Sometimes...
Text Craig?
Text Craig and wine. I was going to say this earlier. I don't remember what you had said or what prompted me to want to say this, but I was just going to say, for me, and I think this is true for a lot of people, is 90% of writing is just putting your... Oh, you had said about procrastinating. You sit down to write, and you can find all these things you haven't been able to do. Yeah, honestly, 90% of writing is putting your butt in the chair for me. I mean, I get anxious, before I sit down. And once I sit down, sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes before you actually get in the flow and kind of slip into that world. A lot of it, when I don't feel inspired, it doesn't matter. I mean, if I have to get it done, I just keep writing. And I think an important lesson for a new author is don't be afraid to write badly. get it on the page. A horrific first draft is still a first draft, and you have something to work with. I mean, I think so many people get confused or, tainted by the notion that you have to be inspired or the muse is going to come. And that just ain't so. The muse is called rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. I mean, rewriting is, as you know, the lion's share of the work. Yeah. But sometimes for me, like I said, it's just I'll just work on it every day. And, I've been trying to plot out the next book, and I've been working on it now for weeks, and I feel like I'm getting nowhere. And then all of a sudden today, something just came to me. And, now I think I have a new idea, and it might fall through. This is like the fourth time an idea has fallen through for this new book. But for me, there's no real secret outside of just sitting down and just experimenting, trying to just think outside the box, think of something different to write, or even just taking a break. I mean, I know that sounds like completely opposite of what I just said, but sometimes just stepping away from the computer, working on something else, just not thinking about it at all. But yeah, as odd as that sounds, I mean, that's the two ways that I get through, writer's block, or whatever. I don't remember exactly how you phrase the question. But yeah, just sitting down and just pushing through it, or just completely just stepping away from it for a couple days.
Yeah, and I don't think the two things are as opposed as you might think, like sitting down and writing or taking a break, as long as I think we're honest with ourselves about our motives, because we know that the reason we're doing other things isn't because we actually need to do them, we're actually avoiding.
Writing. Absolutely.
So it's just
true.
Just being honest with yourself, doing what you need to do, putting in the work, and that's really what it comes down to.
It really it's putting in the work. I mean, people say, it's such a, like you said earlier, I don't remember what context, it's such a romantic notion to be a writer. People who aren't writers think that, but you're sitting in a room for hours on end. You're looking at the same sentence where you took out the comma, and then you put the comma back in, and then you took out the comma again, and then you made it a semicolon, then you decided it should be a comma. I mean, that is literally just hours on end sitting by yourself.
It's so true.
Everything. I mean, it's madness. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. If you're compelled to do it, you have to do
it. Why does anyone do this?
Seriously.
Well, it's because we have to.
It's because you have to.
Well, I think this is probably a good place to end it. But before I do that, when is your next book due out? So everybody can know about that.
Sure. So April 12th is when I Know You will be released. And yeah.
So we'll look forward to that. So thanks for joining us, Erik. It was great to talk to you, and we made it actually in the entire hour. Can you believe it? I thought for sure I'd have you running and screaming from the room by now, but
running out of things to say. No, I'm good. So I appreciate the opportunity to chat with everyone, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. We'll talk later.